This week's Fallout Friday, we are starting work on one Frank Horrigan. This is a very big old meaty boy, as we can see here. For those not aware, Frank Horrigan was an end boss in Fallout 2, one of the older games. So there were no digital renders or files or anything like that for Modiphius to use. So this is a completely original sculpt. And he was part of the Enclave forces. However, he's an Enclave soldier who's undergone FEV mutation, so he can be most easily thought of as a advanced super mutant in oversized power armor. So he's got this plasma cannon strapped underneath his arm, this big old blade on his other arm, and he's standing on this crushed and defeated Deathclaw. So the base is real nice. A lot of his skin is exposed. So for instance, the hands and the upper arms and the area around the neck, just beneath the helmet, and then his kind of upper back section here and lower back section here. The rest is metallic armor and underpinning, as we've done. I've used my airbrush to apply my my first primer coat, as well as a little zenithal highlight to kind of pick out the details. I'm going to be painting this in a mix of regular and contrast colors. The flesh I'm going to do in contrast. Everything else is going to be painted. I'm going to skip doing any kind of airbrush for the metallics of the armor, so we'll be doing regular brushing for that. So first up, I need to go ahead and work on the flesh. As with anything painting related, I start with the lower sections, so in this case the flesh, and work my way up. So I'm just taking this few dollops of Wraithbone base coat from Games Workshop, because the flesh will be gone over with contrast paints. I want to use the Wraithbone, and then I'm going to add some water to thin it out. Just kind of combine this all here in my palette. Forgot. Turn on my little banner. There we go. And I could probably do with a bit more water. It's not flowing as much as I'd like. There we go. Away my mixing brush, break out my good brush. Okay, so just a bit of paint on the tip, and we're going to start working first just under the helmet here. Could have probably done with not attaching the head to begin with, because he is so big. And I do want to get underneath everything. In fact, actually, I've attached that really strongly, so let's not try and pop it off. And the reason we start high and work low, start low and then work up to the higher points, is that any mistakes I make, so for instance, a bit of paint getting on the helmet there and on the chest plate there, not a huge deal because we're going to go back over those anyway. all up under this pipe is going to be the bigger problem. Definitely should have let this be painted separately, but live and learn. It's always something to be aware of when assembling your model, is how difficult it's going to be to apply paint to certain areas. Right now, and as I said, I'm not being overly cautious because I know I'm going to come back and do all of the metallic layers after. So we can see his skin kind of ends when it hits this plate here. And on the other side, it never gets a chance to, because the leg plate is kind of up. So we don't have to worry about that. Now his arms, getting up in here. Probably also broken out one of my smaller brushes maybe. But as I said, I'm not super concerned about the mess I'm creating. This is more about providing guide lines for when I come back with the contrast. Also, I'm not going to worry about having 100% coating over the black, because that will provide the shading itself once I put the contrast paints on. And yes, right now it is a big old mess. That's the way it starts. Everything starts as a big old mess. This is why you shouldn't overly stress when you're starting painting. No matter how bad you think it looks, when you're just starting, it'll get better. Additional lines, additional layers. Big old biceps here. Don't want to do a second coat, I think. And the second coat's always a bit quicker, because we're just kind of getting in there and hitting it real quick. You can see doing the second coat really starts to build that flesh, that Wraithbone color over it, which is what we want. So it allows us to fix any mistakes we might have made. Rest of this is all tech component. Oh, hands. Almost forgot the hands. That would have been bad. Well, not bad, but just I would have had to come back and fix it. This hand is gripping firing stud, basically. Quite a bit of that to fix. Alright, so we're going to let that all dry. Shouldn't take too long. And then we're going to work on our flesh tone. A bit too much paint built up on this. So for our flesh tone, we are actually going to combine a couple different colors. So we are going to use Plague Flesh. So Plaguebearer flesh, which I've used on a lot of my super mutant models. And we're gonna combine it with Darkoath flesh. So let's see. While this is drying, we can give this a try. And I can kind of show you how I do my testing. So start off with a 1-to-1 of each. And we're just going to go ahead, take my mixing brush, combine the two. And just painting a line on this board that I've used to prime a lot of stuff. And you can kind of see the brown is definitely overpowering the green there, I think. So what I'm going to do is apply another drop of green. So now we're at a 2-to-1 Plague to Darkoath. So I don't want to lose that green and the brown completely. Doesn't look like much of a change, but there is a slight variation. You can see this is it is a bit lighter. And actually, I think that's about what I want. But we're going to try a 3-to-1 just to see what happens. So again, taking Plaguebearer flesh, just adding another drop. And actually, I think I like that the most. You can see the brown coming out, and now it's mostly just a highlight within the plague. So I think that's what we're going to live with. Alright, so need to make this up. So 2 dollops of that. So we will need 6 dollops of our plague. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. Get that all mixed up. Another test. Yep, it's staying the color I thought it was going to be. So now, should have had sufficient time for our base to dry. Just going to take a look. No, it's still a little glossy. But the part around the head has. So we're going to start there. Get a good amount on our brush. Again, we don't care if we kind of splash over, we'll fix it. Oh, that is exactly what I wanted. Yes, 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 yes. Perfect. That's what I want, is this kind of sickly brown. Oop. Get the focus in there. So you can see, shows up real good. Make sure I've got it up in the high sections. Alright. And let's apply it on the back. Going definitely heavy because it's contrast. And again, I don't much care if it flows off. I will fix it all in post, as it were. Yep, some of this is still wet though. So we will let that sit and let the other stuff dry. Then we'll come back. I'll finish the rest of it off camera and we will focus on the metallic afterwards and kind of bringing it back in. Alright, as we can see, we've got Frank's skin tone all done. It came out exactly the way I want, with kind of a mottled greenish brown, which is the way it appears in what little you can see of him in the original games. Now, instead of going on to the metal, I've decided to do the base a bit, in this case the Deathclaw. And this is because I'm going to be using some dry brush techniques on him. So I want to make sure that he's done before I start work on the metal itself. That way any mistakes with the dry brush, the metal will paint over. Now the technique I'm going to use is based on one by a video by the painting bloke. I'll have it linked in the description, but it's his concept, but the paints I like to use. So to start off with, what we're going for is a glowing Deathclaw. So I'm going to use a warp lightning contrast to get a nice green base. So we're just going to apply this nice and liberally. Again, not being overly careful because we're going to wind up dry brushing over the top and fixing any splashes that may occur. Spines, etc. can be a bit of a pain to work around. Let's go ahead and, there we go, bring that a bit more into focus. Again, the contrast paint will give us some nice shading to start off with. And then we're going to be working it a bit to kind of make it even more of a glowing one. Now it just does not want to stay locked on. There we go. I'm also trying a new camera position, so we'll see if that improves how things look. Down the tail. So not only is Frank a huge model in and of himself, his base basically contains an entire model of its own in the form of the Deathclaw. So this video may wind up being split into two. We'll see how far I get before Friday. We'll wind up uploading what I have finished. So we will see. This is a very, very nice bright green. There we go. Just around the bottom of the boot, up to his head. Arm here. Autofocus is playing tricks again. even though the horns are normally a separate color, we still want to start them off with green. Alright, now, as with any time we apply contrast, we go back and look for any areas that the paint may have pulled away from or that we just missed. Just make sure that that green is coating every single possible surface. This is also the technique I'm going to use on at least one of my remaining Mirelurks. Okay. So any of the remaining white is just splashes from when I based it. So maybe right in there. Let's get a little dab. There we go. Right in that junction where the boot sits. I should have made it easier on myself and just painted the base separately and then attached, but as we've already proven, I glued it all together without thinking, so there we go. Alright, so we have to let this dry, and then we'll apply dry brush over the top of black to kind of obscure, and that way we can see where all of the green recesses are. And then we're going to be applying some additional highlighted areas with an even brighter green. Alright, so next up I'm going to do some black dry brush. And this is one of the few cases where I use actual black instead of just like a dark gray. So we're taking our handy dry brush, working it in a little, and then working it out a lot. And then what we're doing is we're going to go ahead and just dry brush the entire model. Seems like we picked up enough black actually. Huh. Not getting any pigment off of this. Let's try this again. Just needed to load the brush up a bit more. And this is why I wanted to do this before working on the model itself, is I can't exactly do detailed dry brushing. Defeats the whole purpose. So we're going to wind up kicking up a lot on the model itself. And so the objective here is to sort out those high sections, bring them back to a black. While at the same time keeping our nice glowing friend glowing. So we can kind of see we've got the start of a glowing one now. Alright. Now, cleaning the dry brush is going to be a bit of a pain in because black tends to really not want to come out. So we're just going to have to be really thorough with that. Next, we are going to take our brush. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, see, we got it up against the a little too deep. Should we clean that off? But the top bristles are good and clean. That's what really matters. Okay, so for this, we're just going to take some straight Wraithbone, and we're just going to apply in the very deep recesses. Also the mouth and the eyes. So let's start. And what we're looking for, instance, I'm going to go in and just apply in the middle of the mouth. I'm going to very gingerly get the eyes. And then we want to take like the line here on the biceps and kind of there. And we're not trying to like apply perfect lines. We're just trying to give ourselves a base for what we're going to do next. So we're just kind of going in. Kind of get the ribs a little here. Again, I don't have to look for perfection. Let's try to get this here. Then around the back of the knee. Okay, so that just kind of sets the stage. Now we're going to go ahead and apply some, not Lightning, Tesseract Glow. So this is a even more neon green. And it also is it's a little dried out apparently. So that's why another use for those sticks I use on terrain. Oop. Just to break up the bottom of this. All right. So we're going to take now and apply the Tesseract glow to all these areas that we just did. Don't need a lot of it because we're just kind of applying it to the areas that we have highlighted. And that's what the white's going to allow us to paint into it. And again, we don't have to be detail orientated because anything that doesn't go on the white is going to kind of help blend in with the rest of the model. Let's just make sure we picked all that out. Yes, we have. I'll spread that around a bit more. Make sure the eyes are fully done. All right. So we're going to let that the glue dry there. And once that's done, we're actually going to do another lighter dry brush, more detailed dry brush of black, and then an overall wash of the entire model. Alright, now that the Tesseract glow has dried, I'm going to do a bit more dry brushing, this time with a smaller brush, so that we can have a bit more control with it. So again, we load up the brush, get rid of most of it, And so what we're looking for now is to just kind of apply it very lightly, just to kind of bring it all back. Also hit any of the areas it didn't really get into. Especially the horns. Mostly want those to be black. Now that we've applied that, what we're going to do is a glaze of Tesseract glow over it. So what we mean by glaze is we're going to dilute the Tesseract glow some, and we're going to dilute it with some contrast medium. Let's just do 2 drops. So using double the amount of medium to Tesseract glow. So we really want to dilute it down. So we're just gonna mix this together. And then I want to see kind of how it's going to flow. So I'm going to take my board. Let's see how it goes over. See how when I run it over the colors I've already done, it doesn't really alter them? That's pretty much what we're looking for. We want it to be present, but thin enough not to update too much of the color. So I'm just going to start kind of spreading it around here. You can see it goes on, it looks fairly bright, but then it fades out really quickly. So we're not overloading it again, we're just kind of applying it everywhere. And this will bring all of the work we've done together and really give it that irradiated glow. I could probably even thinned it more, but I like how it's going on. kind of purposefully leave it off the horns. Okay, so I'll let that dry. Okay. Now, while that's drying real quick, I'm going to start in on some of the rest of the base with my Towelite Ochre. Since this is basically laying in dirt, we want it to represent that. So for now, I'm just going to kind of work around the rest of it. I'm not going to go near the Deathclaw itself, kind of giving it that extra time to dry. It'll dry pretty fast though. In fact, yeah, everything else looks dry now. Another reason I should have painted the base separately would have made this a lot easier. Again, I'm not going up against the Deathclaw just yet. Just getting close. I'm going pretty thick with the paint as well, simply because it's over black, so it takes a bit more pigment to really get it to stay. Alright, so now I can start working that a little bit closer in to the Deathclaw. Now I'm going to use some brown wash over the ochre. So again, I don't have to get super close because the wash will pool into the corners between the ground and the Deathclaw nicely. So don't worry about being super detailed and in depth with this. That brown wash will do just fine. It's such a awesome diorama type base. Really cool scene. So it's worth the extra time it'll take to get the Deathclaw painted and everything. Right. So while that's drying, we're going to move on to the metal. Now I want to start with a and actually before I even move on to the metal, I'm going to do the undercoating. Not sure where that's from. So we're going to start with some Necromancer Cloak. Bit much, but still, let's water it a little. And switch over to my good brush. So this, what I'm focusing on, is going to be what looks to be the suit. So we're talking about right in here. Down around that plate. A little bit under here as well. And then the top here, the knee. Now again, since I'm working bottom to top, as far as the layers go, if I mess this up, I can easily correct it when I go to the metal. Okay. Go around. What plate? I don't think that's part of it. So normally we'd have to apply this on the elbows as well, but since there is no elbow armor, not an issue. Alright, now we're also going to do the pipes on the helmet. And this is where we start to see fixing some of those mistakes with the flesh color. We're even going to really quick fix any of these lines that I can so that the metallic is going on over dark. Oops. So again, we're just fixing the glaring mistakes that we may have made. Alright. Alright, that's all done. Let's start on the metallic itself. So I have a few different choices. I've got this Grey Knight steel, which is a bluish steel, so I think I'm going to skip that. I don't think it really works for Fallout. If I was doing the XO1 armor, that I might use it on. I have my old standard cold steel, which again might be a bit too light. There we are. Runefang steel, though, is definitely very light. Let's compare the two here. Just even looking at them. Yeah, you can see this one's much grayer. I am going to do a black wash, so I will do the cold steel. And then what I'll do after is I'll use the Runefang steel for some highlights. Let's see. Yeah, it's too thick. Take some. That should be enough, at least to get started. I'm not gonna show doing the whole model because at this point all you need to know is that everything else is going to be done in this metallic. Yeah, there we go, that flows a lot better. This gun I'm going to leave as is. I'll just kind of base it off of a blackened weapon as opposed to having too much gunmetal. But there, so you can see the leg there is what we're going to go for the entire armor. So I'm going to stop the recording here while I work on this, and we'll be back once it's dried and ready to work on the black wash. Okay, so as we can see, we finished applying the metallic all over, along with picking out some bolts and pieces in bronze just to kind of break up the monotony of it, as it were. So now we're going to go ahead and apply our Nuln oil over pretty much the whole model, except of course for the skin. So we're going to start here at the top and get it all up in the hose. really help to bring out the ridges on that. Now, the helmet. A little bit of color there. Make sure the brush is clean again. Alright, there we go. We're just going to work our way out from the helmet. These big old pauldrons. We're just letting this sink into all of the ridges and details. Really help pull all of that riveting and everything out. Here, other side as well. Just want to be careful not to flick it. Just be real careful that it doesn't drip down onto the base where we don't want it. One thing I'm not going to do with Frank is apply any rust, because he's part of the Enclave faction and they tend to keep their equipment pretty well done. Plus, this is a custom suit for him, so you gotta figure it'll be kept in pretty good condition. So I'm not gonna weather it beyond this black wash. Just trying to run the wash along the top of the sword there. Pick out the details. Alright, and now the gun itself. The gun we're going to be hitting up with some brighter colors since it is a plasma weapon. We just have to get this initial run down onto it though. Okay. So we can see we've now toned the armor down quite nicely. And we're going to go ahead and apply our Agrax Earthshade to the base at this point as well. This way they can just both dry at the same rate. You can see, like I said earlier, when we apply the wash, it's going to run right up against the Deathclaw and fill in those recesses against it nicely. So we don't actually have to worry about how close we got the paint to it. Okay, so we're going to let those washes dry, and then we're going to work on some of the detail steps on the armor. So we need to apply some blood splatter to the blade, as well as sharpen the edge a bit with some of the silver we have, the Runefang steel, which is very bright. That'll look good just kind of applied to the edge of it. We'll also do a bit of dry brushing here and there with it to pick out some of the highlights of the armor itself. And then we've got the eye lenses we're going to do in a red, and we need to apply the detail work onto the plasma weapon itself, which is going to be using that Tesseract glow some more. And then I've got kind of a wash for the Tesseract glow. I'll use this Hex Wraith Flame and see how it comes out to highlight that. But yes, he's coming along quite nicely. Okay, so as we can see, Our wash is dried, so it's giving us a nice tint to the armor now, kind of darkened it up. So that's looking good. Our base is dried, so that's all looking good as well. We got a good green meanie of a Deathclaw on there. So what I want to do now is attempt to do a bit of detail painting. Alright, so since we're going to be doing some detail work, I'm going to try out one of my detail brushes. So this is a 00 from Artist's Opus. I'm not going with a pure white, and that's just because I find it easier not to paint with pure white. Pure white tends to be a little troublesome. And the ivory looks perfectly fine, especially when we're going to glaze over it anyway. So for this, if we take a look again, strange angle. So we've got a lot of area to work with. If we take a look at our model versus that in the game, though, we see we've got a separate plate here. So actually what I'm going to try and do is insert the flag in this area where it's nice and flat, and I'm going to level it out a bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my white and I'm just going to make a rectangular box to start with. So we're just going to kind of line it out. Very small strokes, very small amount of paint on the brush. Alright, so as we can see, so we just got a nice white rectangle. That's a perfectly good start. We don't have to be 100%. We're not counting stars. In fact, I'm not even going to put any dots on the blue field. We're not counting the number of lines that we've got in it. We're just giving the impression of the flag. So I'm going to move on. I'm going to use a Signar blue base for the upper corner. P3 tends to be fairly liquid already, and I just need a very small amount of it. So we are just going to start kind of coloring that upper corner. Doesn't have to be perfect, just has to give the impression of it. have some old GW Foundation color, Macandrite Red. This is almost a purplish red. So yeah, we're going to skip that. I'm going to figure out what I did with my actual red by knocking everything over on my desk. Oh, I know what it is. Had it set aside for something else. So this is, we're actually using Game Color Heavy Red. So this is a fairly dark red. Again, because I'm doing details, I'm not going to focus as much on watering it down. So we want to make sure we're boxing in. So this is going to be interesting. We're not going, as I said, we're not going for full life size here. But what we are doing, that's a bit too much paint. Let's just kind of drag along the top. Drag along the bottom. There. Ooh, way too much. All right, and that's pretty much what I'm going to go with. To fix those lines a little though. Kind of tapering off when I get to the edge. So I just need to apply. Alright, and we're going to leave it at that. Again, up close, kind of a hot mess. Oh, we kind of lost our focus there. There we go. But when you bring it away, you can tell it's supposed to be a flag. So that's what I'm going for. I do need to fix slightly the corner, since I did get a splodge there. Don't focus on fixing too much stuff, because you'll wind up running around in circles of fixing and then unfixing, and yeah, back and forth. So we'll leave that as is. Now, for our glaze, we are going to use one of our browns. We're going to go for the lightest contrast brown we have, which is the Dunes, I do believe. Gorgonta Fur, it's purple, that's that. Alright, so we're going to go with Aggaros Dunes. This here and do a single drop, and I'm going to go with 3 parts contrast medium. Why 3? Because we want a very light tinging. Put our brush up. go back to using my standby brush. Alright, and we're just going to test first kind of along the back here. Yep, that's exactly what I want. So now we're going to start at the top. And I'm actually going to leave these bumps clear. I think they'll stand out a little. Go right over the flag, and that will kind of pull it into the rest of the armor as well. I want to capture the edge. Under the lip here. Kind of getting a second coat down, just to even it out and increase the pigment. Alright, so it pulls the shoulder pads into a nice separate color. Next up, we're going to work a little bit on the gun to give it some details. So I'm taking my Wraithbone base so that I can lighten up where I want to apply the green. And that's going to be with these kind of fuel cell things. We're just kind of dabbing that into the middle. Make sure we get both sides. Okay. Then this little kind of cylinder thing here. So there should be, there's two on one side, but only one on the other because of the mounting bracket. Okay. We also want to look at the eyes a little bit. Let's see how the eyes are doing. So the eyes picked up a bit more dark than I wanted from the wash. So we're going to take our Runefang steel that we're going to be doing highlights with anyway. And we're going to get a little bit of shine back into the eyes. Now these are supposed to be red, and there's a reason I'm doing the shine to them right now. They will be red, but this will help bring the red forward. Okay. It's a very slight adjustment. Oh, well, we have this open actually. We also want to apply this to the edge of the blade. So very subtle. All right, now that base should have had plenty of time to dry, we're going to take our Tesseract Glow. And apply it. It gives us a very nice glow there. All right, now for the eyes, I'm going to use, if I can find it. There's all my blues. There is my red version. There. There we go. I'm going to use a GW technical paint called Spiritstone Red, if it still has any. Okay, yeah, it does. So this is a proper glaze. Which is why we wanted to make sure we had metallic underneath the eyes. And I'm going to go back to my smaller brush. That wasn't the one I used, it was this one. Okay. So what we're going to do, so as this is a proper glaze, what it's going to actually wind up doing is layering over the metallic, still too much paint, and allowing it to kind of shine still. It's similar to contrast paints, but it's even more. just got that pipe in the way. And that might be hard to see, but that gives it a nice red tinge. We're gonna have to fix that pipe I wound up tinging. Which, that happens. I mean, a lot of time we spend fixing mistakes we may have made throughout. Just try not to get stuck into a cycle of constantly fixing. Alright, let's see. Now, in addition, we're going to do some blood splattering on the blade. I think that's going to... Oh, and that's right. Grab the base. We've got a radiation symbol on the back. So we want to go ahead and pick that out with our white. And we're going to add yellow to that. So we have a nice hazard symbol. Okay, well, that rest of that is drying. Let's take our gray and fix that pipe. Oop, dang it, too much again. Good. So I'm going to let things set real quick and we'll come back and finish up the last few details. Alright, so we're back to finish up our last few details. So, busting out the contrast Iyanden yellow, because it's the best way to paint yellow. And we're just going to hit that reactor on the back. There we go. See, it stands out nice now. Little details like that, especially because they're raised, are good to hit because they'll really add some color to the model that might be lacking otherwise. Now we're going to do the blood splatter on the blade, and because we're going up against a glowing Deathclaw here, I'm going to go ahead and use my Tesseract glow again. And what we're going to do, we look for the impact zone, the cutting edge of the blade, which is on the inside, as we know. I've got a hair on my brush there. And so we're going to take it and we're going to apply some flicks of blood all along the model. And we're just creating impact scores. Just like that, and then we'll do the other side. And then that gives us a little splatter on the blade then. Now if we decide that it's too weak, we can just apply more coating. We're just going to come in, apply some more flicks in our chosen direction. Especially want the tip so that it looks like the blood's just kind of pooling down. Now, another thing we can do if we want to apply some detail here is do almost a glow effect up into the armor. So what you want to look at, creatures down here maybe throwing off a glow, so we're going to mostly hit around the kneecaps and the lower portions of the chest. And we don't want to go super heavy on this. So what we're going to do is take our Tesseract glow, 1 dot of that, to 3, or actually 4 I'm going to do of contrast medium because this is so strong. And I think 1 more because that 1 dot was very weeny. Let's see, let him mix this up. So all we're looking to do is kind of apply some to the under. So we're just applying it to the back of the armor here and kind of thin it out a bit. Lightly on this knee pad. Kind of down. Bottom of the groin plate here. Inside of this leg a little. And down to the boot. I'm going to apply some all kind of just around the tip of the boot, the underside of the circle here. Again, I'm using a very small amount of paint for this. And then I'm just going to kind of add some here, just on the under and under the chest here. Just to kind of simulate. So when we're looking at it down, we don't see much of that glow, but when we tilt it up, we can see it there. Alright, so despite my concerns that this would wind up being a 2-part, I kind of got into the groove with Frank here, and he's pretty much done with painting. Next, we're going to go ahead and seal him, and then go ahead and apply our tufts and etc. all on the base. There's a lot of open space here, so we can really jazz it up a bit. Okay, so before I went to seal, I realized I hadn't done my highlighting, which we're just going to be doing with dry brush with the Runefang steel. So it should be really nice and quick. So I'm just going to load up the brush, work it in. And then we're just going to go over, for instance, the top of the helmet here. We want to kind of hit any of the raised portions. A bit. And what we're doing is just kind of applying, so it'll hit these raised bits and just kind of bring out a bit more of a shine on certain sections of the armor we want to. Kind of as a counterpoint to the shading we did with the green. Take a look at his back. There. onwards to sealing. Alright, as we can see, the sealant has done its job. It's kicked off all of the super shiny parts. So, Big Man is all ready. So now we have to just apply some tufts to call him done. So I'm going back to using my Army Painter ones, which are my preferred ones. And since we have a nice big base, we're going to start with a nice big tuft. So we're just going to apply some glue. And apply this one here. I'm going to do some medium ones. Okay, so we're going to call Mr. Horrigan done. Okay, we've got the glow coming up from the bottom there, looking really nice. All the details are looking good. Oh dear. Problem with that one tuft coming loose, but we're all set. Alright, in the back, got that nice radiation symbol being shown off. So there we go. My first painted Enclave model. As always, if there's any models you'd like to see being painted, let me know, and we'll be back next week with more Fallout Fridays.